Good day, everyone. We will be discussing about cultural appropriation, which is the topic for Module 14 in our Art Appreciation subject. As we can see here in our presentation, we have here a table of contents which includes the following. First, introduction to cultural appropriation. Second to fifth are the categories of the cultural appropriation, which are the cultural exchange, cultural dominance, cultural exploitation, and last is the transculturation. We will be also discussing what transpiration is and also covering about the story of Ishmael June Kimpo Jr. and last, the awit ni June. Before that, we will be going to introduce ourselves first. I am Kristine Kate ng Patak Salise together with Miss Laiza Medrano from BSN1-2, the presenter for today. For the introduction, we have to know first what cultural appropriation is. Cultural appropriation is defined as a concept and sociology dealing with the adoption of the elements of a minority culture. It is distinguished by from equal cultural exchange due to the presence of a colonial element and imbalance of power, meaning to say there is a influence and there is an exchange from both culture, whether it is equal or imbalanced power. Next, cultural appropriation is defined broadly as the use of a culture's symbols, artifacts, genres, rituals, or even technologies by members of another culture. It is inescapable when culture come into contact, including virtual or representational contact. So, we uses the culture's symbols, artifacts, genres, rituals, or even technologies to exchange our culture with another culture. And that is inevitable considering that whenever one culture contacts with another culture, we have to take into consideration that both parties will have an exchange. Next is cultural appropriation is also inescapably intertwined with the cultural politics. It is involved in assimilation and exploitation of marginalized and colonized cultures and in the survival of subordinate cultures and resistance to dominant culture, meaning to say in cultural politics, the cultural appropriation is viewed as the marginalized and colonized cultures, whereas there is a survival between the subordinated cultures from the resistance towards the dominant culture, meaning to say there in both parties, one will be the subordinated cultures and the other one will be the dominant cultures. Next, we can see here a picture of one of our cultural heritage in the Philippines, also known as Fort Santiago, located in Intramuros, Manila. Now, moving on to the four categories of cultural appropriation. The first one is the cultural exchange. Cultural exchange is the reciprocal exchange of symbol, artifacts, rituals, genres, and or technologies between cultures with roughly equal level of power. Now, we have to take note that the cultural exchange has its own originality from both parties, meaning to say they have both equal levels of power. They exchange their interests in culture, can be either symbols, artifacts, rituals, genres, or even technologies. And nowadays, we use this interest as our advantage to learn furthermore from the other or from the different culture. Next is the cultural dominance. The use of elements of a dominant culture by members of a subordinated culture in a context in which the dominant culture has been exposed onto the subordinated culture, including appropriations that enact resistance. So meaning to say, we have here both dominant cultures. The member of the other cultures are influencing the other ones, which there could be a mix of both. And then the subordinated culture, which are holding on resistance for survival, is adapting to the both culture from the dominant culture. We can see here in our picture that the first picture is one of the traditional clothing in the Europe way back before, and the second picture below it is the traditional clothing from the American way back before. And for the third picture, which is in the middle, we have here the African traditional clothing. We can see that the African traditional clothing is the subordinated culture. The way how African people clothes is seen as the influence of the European and American colonization. Next, we have here a cultural exploitation. Cultural exploitation is the appropriation of element of a subordinated culture by a dominant culture without substantive reciprocity, permission, and or compensation. Either to say, other culture is using the subordinated culture in a way that they don't need further permission anymore or any compensation anymore. So we have here an example. The barong Tagalog is used by an American in his daily style when he is going to the beach or when he is visiting one of the country's beaches. Now, we have here the transculturation. Transculturation is a cultural element created from and or by multiple cultures, such as that identification of a single originating culture is problematic. For example, multiple cultural appropriations structured in the dynamics of globalization and transnational capitalisms creating hybrid forms. Considering that the Philippines have gone through a lot of colonizers way back before, we have been colonized by the Spanish, by the American, and also by the Japanese. Now, capitalism is also plays a huge or vital role nowadays. We can see that most of the society's interest varies from which country the culture is originated from. Translation plus creation is equal to transpiration. One of the best examples we can give is by the use of editorial cartooning, whereas the editorial cartoonist is creating an image of can be used as the translation of the text in the journalism. And with that, Ms. Laiza Medrano will discussing for the next topic. Thank you.
The story of Ismael Jun Kim Po Jr. Jun Kim Po was exposed early to the student demonstration that characterized the turbulent days of the early 1970s. His family lived inside Manila's University Belt, and he himself went to school at Sarmiento, a stone's throw away from the seat of the presidency, Malacañang Palace. Only 13 when the first quarter storm erupted. He was caught in the spirit of his time. He wanted to participate and started by getting involved in community organizing. His first experience of an urban poor community was at Constitution Hill in Quezon City, then a squatters relocation area, and now is the site of the Batasang Pambansa. When martial law was imposed and student council were banned, students thought of another means to assert their right to self-organization. At the University of the Philippines, we put up a consultative committee on student affairs, and Kimpo, then a freshman, joined its youth committee. Yet, community work seemed to be more attractive to him. Tatalon was another huge Islam community in Quezon City, and Kimpo became a member of the Alyansa ng Maralita sa Tatalon. With a small allowance from the share and care apostolate for poor settlers, he went about his organizing works, discussing politics with the local residents, urging them to turn away from the hopeless and idleness of their daily lives, at least cut down on their beer drinking sprees, and to take responsibility for their future. Often it was through song that he expressed his views and dreams. With the guitar, he would sing theirs away, inspiring people and making them feel strong. After being arrested and detained for 10 days in 1976, Kimpo decided to give up college and join the anti-martial law underground. For the next 5 years, he lived in the rural areas of the Luzon, where he organized farmers as a cadre of the New People's Army. In December 1981, in the village of Calisitan in Muñoz, Nueva Ecija, Kimpo was killed, courageously shot from the back several times by someone he trusted, a member of his unit. He was unaware that this person was already working with the military. Hailed as a hero by the latter, the killer was said to have committed suicide sometime later. June Kimpo was then 24 years old. His family put together a collection of his song titled Ang Awit ni June in his honor and memory. Some of his original compositions are kasama Alay sa Ina, Lupang Malaon ng aming nasilayan, Pagkat ang bukas ay samasa lamang, Kahapon may musmus kang pangarap, Sanggunian, Anak Bayan at marami pang iba.
Thank you for that, Miss Laiza, and that is for our presentation.